Okay, so it is 2 minutes past 2. I think we can go ahead and get started. Can somebody just confirm that you can see my screen and hear me okay? Just drop a message in the chat box. Perfect, thanks, Jens. All right. So Rebar in Revit, just do it. So I hope that because you guys are here, you guys are quite keen to either get started with detailing in Revit or perhaps just become better, faster and more efficient. So before we go ahead, I would just like to introduce myself from those of you who haven't attended any of my webinars before. I do see some familiar names. But for those of you who are joining for the first time, I'm Nuran and I'm a BIM technical specialist here at Baker Baines. I previously practiced as a structural engineer and I did some Revit modeling there as well, some BIM 360 administration as well. And my main area of expertise was in multi-story residential buildings as well as industrial and educational buildings. And then just a fun fact about me, I learned how to detail in Revit by accident. So what I mean by that is it wasn't my core role. I had no prior experience to detailing in Revit, but we were under pressure on a particular project that required LOD 400, which meant that we needed our rebar to be detailed in 3D in Revit, and no one had the experience or the expertise at the time, and I had the fun task of learning it by myself on a very long and lonely road. And so I thought I will present this webinar today for anybody who might be in a similar position, just because I know the frustrations that go with it. And I would like to just be of assistance in any way. And you guys don't have to go through it alone. You have us to help you, and there's so much resources out there. And I just would like to bring some light to some of those things. So that's a bit about me and about Baker Baines. For those of you who haven't dealt with us before, we've evolved over the past 5 years from being an Autodesk reseller to a niche consulting company that really sets out to solve our customer problems through digital transformation to help you make and design a better world. And in doing so, we offer various business process improvement consulting, as well as survey and design hardware consulting, design software consulting, and it's all rounded off with what we call a blended learning approach, and it's how we believe our customers should digest information. And this is just an overview of the various product offerings that we work with. You guys probably would have guessed that we are a Autodesk partner. We do a lot of training and consulting, making use of their products, but we are also partners of CAD Learning, which is an online learning portal, as well as IDAS and ClearEdge. And lately, the scan to BIM services from Topcon and Leica have become very popular, particularly for things like asset management and facility management of existing buildings, as well as alteration jobs as well. So that's quite fun and interesting. And then I would just like to remind you all that this video is being recorded. It will also be loaded onto YouTube. You can like and subscribe our channel. And I also would just like to let you guys know that this webinar is part of a series, a Level Up Your BIM Journey series. I know some of you have attended our previous webinars in this part of the series by myself and my colleague Anin, where we cover things like just starting off your journey in Revit, and now in the second part of the series we're doing a deep dive. Her previous webinar was aimed at architects, so looking at materials in Revit, and I'm aiming at the structural guys, so focusing particularly on rebar in Revit. So now that you guys know a little bit about me and a little bit about Baker Baines, I would like to get to know a little bit about who we have in the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. Do you do any 3D rebar detailing in Revit is what I want to know. So you should be seeing it on your screen. Please just indicate what your experience is. Okay, so most of you know, but I would like to start. So I'm happy to hear that. It means you're in the right place, but I'm also glad to see that we have got some viewers on here who have used Rebar before, because it means that you guys are sort of taking it on, taking the initiative to learn something new and bring it into your current workflow. Cool, that's nice. I'm going to launch one more. Do you generate schedules in Revit? So this is just for me to get a feel of to what extent you actually make use of Revit. Okay, a lot of you are saying, I don't know how to do that. Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So we're not focusing much on schedules today, but the next part of the series will be focusing a bit more on schedules. So this just gives me a good idea of how much we actually need to deep dive into that. Okay, thanks for that. Now, moving on to the agenda, just to let you know what we are going to cover today. First of all, I just want to talk through some things when you are getting started on your detailing in Revit journey. And then we're going to cover some of the tools and settings. And then we're going to look at how do you actually start to place this rebar. The particular example is going to be rebar in a beam. And then we're going to look at the different ways of viewing rebar. For those of you who have have modeled rebar in Revit, you know that it's there's some settings and things that you need to play around with before you can actually view the rebar as you want. And then also I want to touch on managing rebar, just some tips and tricks on how to get a hold of or keep track of every single thing that is in your model. And then that will bring us to the closing, and then we will start our weekend. Okay, so getting started. So what I always tell people when starting out either with Revit or something new in Revit is to make sure that you've got an account on the Autodesk website. So it's free and it's the same like signing up for Facebook or LinkedIn or anything. All you need is an email address. And the reason why is because the resources that are available are really good. There's also the forum, the Autodesk forum, where you can view things that other people have posted, but you can also post to the forum yourself. You don't need any special kind of subscription or anything like that. So if you're having an issue, you're having a problem, go to the forum, either post your question or search it and see if someone else is experiencing the same problem as you. So here, for example, is just a search of Rebar, and you can see there's a whole bunch of questions that other people have asked. What's really nice is that the Autodesk support team, they actually attend to these queries, and when it is answered and it's satisfied by the person who asked the question, it gets like a little green tick. So you know if you see this on the forum, there's a solution available, and they usually do get back. So I really would encourage you guys to make use of this. This is what I had to rely on. Of course, there's a lot more things available now, but this would be the first point of call, I would say. And then, of course, there's Google and YouTube as well. So once you've got this set up, you've got your Revit, you've got your project that you want to work on. Now you want to start detailing. So the first thing you'll need to do to be able to actually start detailing is load the families, the rebar families. And these families are the shape codes, the video shape codes, and then also the tag or the annotation families. I'm assuming that all of you guys who are listening to this are already making use of Revit so you understand what this means. But if you're using Rebar for the first time, you would have to load these shape codes in. And the out-of-the-box Rebar shapes you will find on the C drive. So whenever anybody who downloads Revit, automatically they get a library of families as well that is loaded onto the C drive. So I'll give you guys a few seconds just to write down or this location or to navigate to it in your file browser. It will be under program data. And if you are not seeing program data on your C drive, it's because it's hidden. So you will just need to unhide the file. And then you will find these shape codes that are South African specific. Previously, like 2018 around, there weren't that much South Africa specific information available, but now there is. If you didn't catch this, you can just refer to the YouTube video or just get in touch with us and we'll tell you where to find it. And then once you've loaded these families in, you can also save this as part of your project template. So if you know that you're going to be detailing on a particular project, have a template that is specific to Rebar that already has all these things loaded. So the next time you start your new project, you have everything you need in there already. Another thing I also like to encourage is the use of worksheets. When you're starting to make use of Rebar in Revit, worksheets become very, very useful. And it's just a way of organizing the various elements in your model beyond the categories. So the worksheets are user specific. So you create your custom worksheets and you apply different elements. So it could be things like all the columns on one worksheet or all the beams on one worksheet. And you can also break up your building into portions, whether it be construction portions or phases or whatever the case, and assign these to different worksheets. And why you would want to do this is some of the benefits. It allows you to reserve parts of a project so that only a specific person can edit that element if that's the kind of control that you need to have on your project. So if you look at this project, for example, so this is like a big hotel, and the worksheets are separated according to the various wings of the building, and perhaps there's different teams that are working on different portions or different individuals that are working on different portions. So this allows you to separate those portions and make each person responsible for their portion and not have various individuals interfere with each other's things in the project. It also allows for good visibility control. So as you can see in this image, you can very clearly see the different portions of the building. And it also does help with model performance. So if you knew you were only going to work on the northwest wing of this building for today, you can close the rest of the worksets. And so essentially you're working with a smaller model, and that helps with your model performance. And that also then just gives convenience for editing. And again, you can assign these according to team member roles. Another example of a way that you can structure your worksets is by element type. So this helps you to identify the columns and the beams from the floors and the walls, etc. And this becomes useful now when you're starting to move to use Rebar. So this is an example of a way that I structured some worksets. So I've got beams, columns, floors, foundations, and walls on different worksets. And then I've also got all of my structural Rebar on a separate workset. And what's nice about this is that somebody else that's working on the model, the central model, that's not working on the Rebar, they can easily just go and switch this workset off. So you select the workset and you hit close. That like closes the workshet. So when the person opens the model, it doesn't take that extra amount of time to generate all that Rebar information. So when you're working on a big complex project, that does become time consuming. So this really is helpful in that way. And then there's different ways that you can organize the workset of your Rebar. In this scenario, all the Rebars on one workset, but of course you can separate it according to elements, building portions, or if you've got 2 or 3 detailers working on one project, you can separate it in that way as well. Okay, so once you've got your families in, you've got your work set up, and now you're ready to detail. There's just one other thing that to keep in mind is that not all elements can actually host Rebar. Of course, it has to be concrete and it has to be a structural element. So the structural usage needs to be switched on, and the family types that can be reinforced is beams, columns, foundations, and floors. And then there's some other things as well which we'll cover in the next section. But so, for example, this is just a regular concrete column that is a structural column that can be detailed. This one, however, is a architectural clad column, and you can see that this is not a structural element. So the Rebar tools won't be available. So in the case of a wall, you just need to make sure that the structural box is ticked before you start to detail the wall. And then the material types that are supported are regular concrete as well as precast concrete. Okay, so this is kind of back to front. I want to just show an example of a small project that already has rebar in it, because viewing rebar in 3D is not as simple as viewing the other elements. There's a few settings that you need to become familiar with, and I want to just demonstrate it in this. So what you're going to see is I'm going to change model category visibility, and I'm also going to make use of a Dynamo script to make the rebar stand out in 3D. And then we will cover those aspects a bit later on in the presentation as well. Okay, so here you can see that there is actually rebar inside these elements, but you can't see the bars itself. So this happens every single time you place rebar. You need to set up like a template or something of the sort so that the bars are easily visible. So in this view, what I've done is I've hid all the concrete elements and made only the rebar category visible. In this one, what I'm going to do is, I've already set up my work sets. So I've got the steel separate to the concrete, and I'm just going to go and switch off all the steel things because I don't need that for now. So I'm selecting all those work sets, just closing it. So now I've got only the concrete elements as well as the rebar inside the concrete. So the first thing I need to do is I need to make the concrete elements a little bit transparent so that I can like see through the concrete and see the rebar. So I'm just setting this transparency. Oh, I should just skip this. Okay. The columns, foundations, beams, and walls. Okay. So now that the concrete elements are see-through, you can see the rebar. I forgot the floors. I just need to go back and set the floors to 50% transparent as well. There we go. So now you can see through the concrete and see the rebar. But if you look closely, you'll notice that the rebar is just like thin lines. It's not those nice 3D elements that you see when you Google rebar in Revit. What you need to do is change the visibility state, and we'll go through this a little bit more later on. But just by way of example, what you would need to do is select the rebar that you want to see, and then go to the properties panel and find visibility states. And then in this box, you need to tick the view that you would like to see this as a solid. So we're currently working in the 3D rebar model. And once you do that, you can see that the bars are now shown in 3D. So this can be a very lengthy process if you've got a lot of rebar, especially because you have to set this in every single view, and also every time when you create a new bar. So I'm just going to undo that, and I'm going to make use of the Dynamo player. So there's a lot of scripts that are available online for free. There's a lot of these view rebar as solids available. You can really just Google it. I needed to edit one of these. If you don't already have the script, I can definitely share it with you. And you can see now that all the rebar is now visible as a 3D solid element. Okay, and you'll need to run the script in every view, but it just takes like 3 seconds, so that's not too much of an issue. You can just keep the Dynamo player open and just run the script every time you need to change the bars from lines to 3D elements. Okay, so coming back to our actual project now, starting to detail a beam, I want to just talk through some of the tools and the settings that are available just before placing any bars in the beam itself. So on the structure tab, you'll see that there is a reinforcement panel. And in this reinforcement panel, the tools that are available is the rebar in just a normal element. Area reinforcement is for slabs and walls. Path reinforcement, there's fabric reinforcement, fabric sheet. Cover we're going to talk about, and then couplers. So couplers and path and area reinforcement we'll talk about in the next section. And then the settings you will find when you click on the drop down in the reinforcement panel. And the setting options that are available is rebar settings, reinforcement settings, and then reinforcement numbers. So the first one you'll see is the rebar cover settings, and this is really like the first setting that you will look at, because it determines the dimensions of your links in any element. So once you select rebar cover settings, you do this at the start of your project, and you can also include these settings in a project template. So you don't have to do it every single time, but you definitely want to check that it is done. So the default is 25 millimeters for cover, and you can see there's no real name or description. So this is something that you want to just set up once and have it ready every single time. So you create new cover settings by clicking on the duplicate or the add button, and then you can go ahead and edit the description and give the cover that you need. And then once that is done, when you go back to your model and you select a element, and you go to the drop down that you see over here, moderate, severe, and extreme, you can then select any one of those cover settings and then apply it either to the element on all the faces, or you can select individual faces and you can assign different cover settings to the different faces. Okay, some other settings also that you probably should look at the beginning is the rounding off. So you can either make use of the project settings that already exist, but there's a separate set of settings for reinforcement. So bar length, you want to increment it to the nearest 50 mils, and then the segments of the various legs of each bar to 10 millimeters. If the yard has a lower tolerance, perhaps 5 mils or something, you can change it to that. But the standard, I guess, is 50 and 10. Then the other settings is relating to reinforcement numbers. So reinforcement numbers refers to bar marks as we would know it generally, and it works a little bit differently in Revit compared to traditional programs. And the biggest difference is that the reinforcement numbers is generated automatically, and so you don't have the same control over physically typing in the bar mark number. But I think the biggest advantage of that is that you'll never have any mistakes with bar marks, either in your schedule or on your layout and your tags. There'll never be a mismatch because it's all automatic, but at the same time, you need to also just understand how the rebar numbering works. So by default, the rebar numbers has only 1 digit, but the more traditional case is to have 2 digits. So you can just go to the drop down and select whatever format you are used to. And then as your project goes on, this table will start to populate. And it will populate with what we call partitions in Revit. And if you are a AutoPads user, this would be equivalent to a member in AutoPads. So it's the partition refers to what you would like to appear on your schedule. It's another way of filtering information or filtering bars. You can use it in a different way, but that's the way that I found the most practical and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail, and perhaps you'll get a bit understanding for that. But what I just wanted to indicate here is that you will need to come back to the settings as you proceed with your schedules, just to make sure that your numbering doesn't have any gaps and that you're starting at the right place. But I will also demonstrate this in a bit more detail when we start placing rebar. So, placing rebar. So the first thing I think to keep in mind after you've got your families loaded and after you have a valid structural host is that when you start to physically place the rebar, keep in mind that rebar can only be placed in section. So that means whatever view you're in, whether it's an elevation view or a plan view or a section view, it has to be physically cutting that concrete element to be able to make use of the rebar tools. So when you select an element that is in section, the modify tool will become available. If it is not, the rebar tool doesn't become available. So here you can see I've got 2 downstand beams and a slab. The section is cutting the actual element, so the rebar tool becomes available. Once I select the rebar tool, the ribbon will change. The reinforcement tools now become available, and you can see various information. So the rebar shape will be in the drop down on the top left, and then in your properties window is where you will set the size of the bar. So that will be like Y12, Y16, the various R and Y bars. And then in the properties panel is also where you can see the dimensions, the A, B, C, D, and E legs of each bar. And yeah, like I said, the tools will be at the top in the ribbon. And so there's a bunch of different panels inside this ribbon. Placement methods today, we're just looking at the first one, just a rebar in a regular element. Freeform and sketching rebar will be in future sessions. And then we've got the placement plane, placement orientation, so what direction relative to the view that you are in you want to place this rebar. And then there's also rebar set, and there's a bunch of options in the layout drop-down that we will also explore in the next video. So let's see what this looks like in action. Okay, so I just want to mention before having a look at how this is done, that there's a few things that have already been set up, and that is like the view filters. So you can see that the concrete is slightly transparent, and that's why the rebar is visible. There's already some rebar that has been placed, and in this video we're going to look at placing those secondary beams that's running sort of in the transverse direction. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. So here you can also see that there are 3 beams that are the same size and they'll have the same rebar. So we'll just detail one, and then as we go along, we'll copy the others. So like I mentioned before, rebar can only be placed in a section. So I'm going to go ahead and place the section. I've created the section type and set up the settings so that once I open the section, it looks very minimal because in a rebar section, you don't need anything else. You just need the outline of the concrete. So I've set my section up to look that way. I'm just going to reduce the viewport. And then you can see that when I click on the beam, the rebar tool becomes available. And when I click on the rebar tool, all the rebar options are available. So I'm going to start with a link. So that's a shape code 60 and go with the Y12 bar. And I just need to change my placement orientation so that the link is parallel with the work plane. I can go ahead and place this in the rest of the beams, but I'm just going to do one beam and then copy the rebar over. So after the link, I'll go in with a longitudinal bar. And I just want to check that I have the correct plane. So you can see whichever cover setting you move to, that's where the bar will sort of orientate to. So those green dashed lines, that's the cover. And you can toggle between like the different planes with the space bar as well. So I'm going to go and choose the fixed bar layout. And for my bottom bars, because I want 3 bars in the bottom, 3 Y20s, and just place it over there. And you can see that once you place this layout, there are grips on the extreme bars that you can move just to fit inside your link, and you can use the rest of the modifying tools if you want to copy, move, mirror, or anything like that. So just to explore some of the other rebar sets, maximum spacing. So you can set this to something like 150 maybe. And if you select this set, those grips are still available. And what happens is if you adjust these grips and you exceed 150 millimeters, another bar will automatically be added so that you never have a spacing of more than 150. And you can also set this specific spacing to be exactly 150 or 125. You can change it so that those 3 bars fit exactly inside the link. And then there's also minimum clear spacing. For BIM, the spacing is not necessarily that much critical as much as the number of bars that is required. So I'm going to just stick with fixed number. 3 bars is all that I need here. And then I want to add the sidebars. So there's also an option to constrain bars. So how this works is if you select constraint placement, whichever bar you place after that, you can see that it kind of like automatically wants to snap to that bar. So it constrains it to that bar. But in this case, I want to constrain it to the link. So those orange lines represent the two elements that will stick together. So now my sidebar is constrained to the link. So when the link moves, the sidebar will also move. So I've got, I think it's 2 16s at 200 here. I just want to make sure that I've got it in the right position. So I'm going to just move it down slightly. Okay. And now I want it on the other side as well. So I'll just use the mirror tool to put it on the other side of the beam. And then before I mirror this, I just want to check the constraints here. I want to constrain the lower bar to the link so that if the link moves, the lower bar moves as well. And then I'm going to mirror it to the top side, but this doesn't have to be a 20. So I'm going to just change this to a 16. And again, just edit this constraint so that it's constrained to the link and not the cover. Okay, so those are the sort of the main bars. And now what happens is if I change the size of the beam, because the link is constrained to the beam, so it updates and the longitudinal bars are constrained to the link, so they will update together. So if we look at this in elevation, you can see the longitudinal bars that we've just placed. And whenever you place longitudinal bars in any element, it automatically makes it the length of that element. So because this beam is modeled sort of center to center or to the edge of the other beam, so is the rebar. So I'm just going to select all of these bars using a filter, and I'm just going to reduce the length so that it doesn't clash with the primary beams. And so that rebar is actually just in sort of in the span of the secondary beam. Okay, otherwise, we're going to end up with clashes, and then afterwards we'll just add some stitch bars or some hooks at the end that will tie into the primary beam. Okay, and then the links as well, we can use the rebar sets to set this. So maximum spacing, don't want the links to be more than 200 mils apart from one another, and you can see that it spreads the links across the length of the beam without intruding on the transverse beams. And if you wanted to have a handle on the number as well, you can select number and spacing, and then you can just adjust that if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and place the hooks at the ends now. But remember that you need to be in a section view, so I need to just make sure that the section cuts the actual element, and now I'm able to place my rebar. Okay, so this is going to be a 37, 16 is fine, and then I just need to check that the placement orientation is the right one. Okay, parallel to the work plane seems fine. Just going to start on the other side. Here we go, you can see the hook a bit better. Okay, and place the bar. Now when I select the bar, I can come back to the properties panel and adjust the dimensions. So I want the hook to be 160 and the length 1250. And then when I'm happy with that, I will just mirror that hook over to the other side. Just need to find this midpoint now. There we go. Okay, the beams are not the same length, so I will just use the move tool to put it in the right place. Okay, so this of course will clash with the other beam, so I'm just going to lift it up so that the hook sits on the B2 level and the main bar is on the B1 level. That's fine, that's not too bad because the other beam is deeper, but okay. And then I'm going to select those hooks, and then I'm just going to mirror it so that we've got hooks in the top as well. Okay, here we go. These hooks should have been 1450, not 1250. Okay. So now if I want to view this in 3D, I can just select the beam and then use my box selection tool to see the entire beam in 3D. And you can see that these rebar elements now are just lines. They're not 3D solid elements. Okay. So that's what will happen every single time you add new beams. So there's just some things that we need to do so that the bars appear as how we want to see it. So visibility state. So just a little bit of an overview about it. Rebar is not visible by default. As soon as you place any bar, this is what it will look like. And it's a setting that you need to set. It's an instance property. And you need to also make the concrete elements transparent before you can see them. And that's easily set up in a template, view template. And once it's set up as transparent, it will look something like that. So you can see through the concrete. But then there's also some other visibility states. So there's two options. You can view as solid but obscured. So that means that the rebar is obscured by the concrete, or you can view as solid and obscured. So the rebar is not obscured by the concrete. This is kind of like a preference, I guess, so you can see which one you prefer and which works well for you in your project. And just another thing to keep in mind is that you need to set this for every single view. It's not like a one-time setup thing. This for me was one of my biggest frustrations, but really there's a lot of scripts and add-ins out there that really just make this a lot seamless. So yeah, so I would really urge you to make use of that. So what that looks like with the beam that we just detailed is we've got this. So I'm going to go to my player. It's already open, so I'm just going to launch my player and then play the actual script. And now we've got our solid bars. Okay, so that looks a lot better, and we can see that we don't have any clashes. Our stitch bars are sitting on top of the primary beam's main bars. Cool. Okay, so now that we're happy with this beam, we can now copy this rebar to any other beams that are identical and have the same design as well. So before getting to that, I also just want to talk about the different ways that bars can be selected. There's a few different ways that this can be done. And the first one, Control Shift, so that's just selecting multiple objects. You can also do a box select, so select everything and then just do a filter to filter only the structural rebar elements. But there's also some right-click options. So the first one being select all instances that are visible in the view. So that means whatever view you have open, all the elements that have the same type will be selected. So in the case of rebar, type refers to the bar size. So whether it's a link or hook or straight bar, if they're all Y16s, they are the same type, and they will all be selected in that view. The second one is all the elements visible in the entire project, so in various views as well. And then there's also the option to select all rebar in host. So the host refers to the concrete element that is hosting the rebar, right? So the beam is the host of the rebar that you're seeing on screen now. And then there's another way to also select rebar, and that is highlighting model. When I learned this for the first time, I was a bit sad that it took me this long before I found this out. So this one is also quite nice when you start getting to scheduling, and perhaps you are reviewing your schedule and you see that there is something that's not quite right. To be able to actually go and locate that one Y10 clip when you've got thousands of bars can be a bit of a headache. So you can make use of highlight in model to find that. This luckily is a nice schedule. You can see there aren't any issues, but this video also just demonstrates the way that it can be done. So if we look at the beams over here, let's say we want to find out, we want to find all of these bars that are included in the schedule. You can select the cells and then hit the highlight in model tool, and then it will show you that location in various views. So when you click on the show button, it cycles through the view tabs that you already have open in your project. So if you've got a lot, it will cycle through all. If you've got a few, it will cycle through those. And once you hit close, you can then go into the model and then make any changes if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to only view where the bar mark 3 is, you can do the same thing, cycle through the views until you find the one that you want, then close it, and then you can go ahead and make any edits to that element that you wanted. Okay, in this case, we're working with groups here, and we'll come to groups in a bit. But yeah, that's how you do it. Okay, and then now we get to the changing rebar color bit. So I'm sure that you must have seen nice fancy colors of rebar. There's a few different ways to do it. So let's look at one of it is using object styles. So object styles allows you to create categories and then assign colors to various categories. So how that would look is in your Manage tab, there's a button for object styles. Once you open this up, you'll see your various model categories. And if you then navigate to Rebar, select Rebar, you can modify the subcategories and create various subcategories within the Rebar model category. And then those categories, you can then give it a name and then assign, what it actually is. So the type of a rebar relates to the size. So then you can go and create subcategories of all the Y bars and all the R bars and assign various colors to each of those. Okay, and then you'll end up getting something like this. And what you're seeing here is that all of the bars of a particular size is the same color. Another way to do it is also using view filters. So I particularly prefer to use the view filters, but I mean, like I said, there's different ways to do it. So if you've got a view template, you can then use this in future projects as well. So in your view template, when you open it up, you can then go to the filters, the filter overrides, and when you open that up, you can then add filters that also relate to the bar size, and that relate to the type of bar that it is in Revit, and then you can go and you can assign different colors to those filters. So let's see what that looks like in action. So this is one of the beams that we were working with, and I'm going to the filters. These are filters that I had already set up, so I'm just going to switch them on, and then the bars appear in the various colors. So this helps you to identify where you've got light bars and where you've got heavy bars. So the orange bars are Y20s and the red bars is Y25s. So it just gives you a nice overview of where you've got heavy bars and light bars. I'm just going to close the section box to view the rest of the floor. And then, oh, okay, let me actually move on first. Okay, so this is the bar that the beam that we just added the rebar to it, and we just changed the color of it. So now we've got like 3 other beams that is identical in geometry as well as design, and so now we want to copy this rebar over. So there's also different ways to go about copying rebar in Revit. So if anybody is still not yet on rebar in Revit, the more traditional packages, you could just detail it once and then change the member number or the number of, and it will just multiply each thing. But in Revit, you need to have the actual element present in the model to be able to schedule it and to be able to have the right amount of bars in your schedule to send off to site. And there's some debate around that because it's not as what you're used to in particular, but it is also a way to limit mistakes. So you'll never have a counting problem because everything that you're sending to site is in your model. You'll never have an instance where you've got double the amount of rebar arriving on site or too little rebar arriving on site. Everything is accounted for, and this is why in this session I really wanted to look more on the managing side of things as opposed to just putting bars in elements. And prior to 2020, copying wasn't always very seamless. So if there's anybody on here who has used Rebar in Revit before 2020, I'm sure you'll agree. But there has been a lot of improvement to the copy logic. And there's also a few add-ins that you can use to make copying the rebar easier than the native tools in Revit. But what I particularly like is creating groups of rebar and then copying that group to whatever identical element there is that shares the same rebar. And what is particularly nice about the groups is that if you need to make a change or update at a later stage, if you make a change to one group, it updates it in all of the groups. So you don't have to go and make that update every single time, especially if you've got the same rebar that's being repeated like 10 times. And there is a downside though. The downside of this is, of course, that if you've got a big and a complex model, updating the groups can take some time, and it does become data intensive because having multiple groups also increases the information that needs to be stored and run in your model. So you have to use your own discretion in this one. Think about the size of your project and think about what will be more efficient in your case. But this is what it looks like, and you can give it a try and see if you like it. Okay, so I'm just going to expand this to see the sort of the full floor. So I'm just going to look at this one panel. So I'm going to isolate the beams that are sort of similar. So those 3, and select that one also. And then I can either click on the box tool or type BX, which is the shortcut. And I'm just going to extend the side over here. So that last beam is actually continuous. So it's not exactly the same as these simply supported ones. But I'm going to go and I'm going to select all rebar in host. So that's all the rebar that belongs to that beam. And I'm going to create a group of this beam. So I'm going to give it a name, beam B. And that's the same name that will appear on my key plan. And then while making sure I'm in the top view, I'm going to just go and copy this over and make sure that my placement is square so that it's in the exact same position. And you can see now that the two that I just pasted are not solid. So I need to go to my player, run the script, and now I've got solid bars. And the filters generate automatically. So now what's nice is if I go and I need to update this, let's say to a Y20 for example, or 25, and I hit finish, you can see that it updates in the other two groups as well. Okay, so I'm going to just go and switch it back to Y16s because we don't need 20s in the top. So I'm going to select that bar, change it back to Y16, hit finish, and once again it updates it in all of the model groups. Okay. Let's see. Okay. And if you now go to the different views, you'll see that although the rebar is there, you don't see it. You have to run the script in each view every single time. Okay, so there we've got the rebar now. And if I'm just going to go to the south side of this layout, and you'll see that that panel is sort of repeated there as well. So again, I can do the same thing. I can select that model group and then use the copy button and then just make sure I'm in a, well, this is a floor plan, so it is plain. Just make sure I select the edge of the beam and then copy it to the edge of the next beam. Okay, cool. So the last one is a continuous beam, it won't. Okay, and then if I expand this, I will have to go and run my script again so that I can see the bars in 3D. Okay, so there's different ways to use view filters. What you've seen on the screen so far is using the view filters according to the size of the bar. But another way that you can do it is also according to the building or construction portions. So if portions of this building were sort of like this is a modular building, so you want to indicate the different sections, you can do that as well. And this helps you, it just gives a nice visual representation. Another option is to color it according to the partitions. So that's according to the various beam types that you would have reflected on your key plan so that you can easily identify which beams are identical, which ones will be repeated in your schedules, and also another checkpoint for when you are creating your schedules, because if you've got a rebar that looks like it's in the right place, but it's not assigned to the correct partition, you will have an error in your schedules. So doing this is a nice visual check just to make sure that all of those things are in order. And then what you've seen earlier by type or rebar size, and this helps you to identify the distribution of the bar sizes so that you can see where you've got light bars and where you've got heavy bars. And another option which I quite like is by function, like the structural usage. And this is something that you can use to make your design reviews easier. So what you're seeing on the screen is all the red bars are the tension portions of the beam. And the grayed out bars are all the nominal bars. So this just gives you a nice quick overview of what's happening in your structural system. And then just to see how each of these view filters have been set up, we can quickly just give it a run through. So here in this model, you can see that this is just before any bars or any filters have been applied. There's no colors assigned to the bars. So this is what it would look like. And I just want to show what it looks like if you go and switch the rebar off. And then you can in the same way just go back and switch it on again. Okay, so this is the rebar by partition. So if I go to my view template and I go to my view filters, I can see that the various partitions of my beam are listed here, and each one has been assigned a different color, and you can come back and edit these colors if you like. Rebar by bar diameter. Again, I'm going to my view filters, and here you can see the subcategories have been added and different colors have been assigned. And then for the rebar by analysis, if I go to my view filters, I've got nominal tension, compression, and high shear that are switched on. And then this is a parameter that was added, and it's an identity parameter that you need to go and type in. So it's a custom one that I created. So for example, if I select the links here, I'm trying to get the links, and I go to my properties browser, look for identity data, I can see here that this is a high shear area and it's colored by this purple. So this immediately, if I look at it, I can see, okay, where my high shear areas are. And I can also see that I actually missed out on some beams that should be high shear, but I didn't assign the reinforcement just yet. So this is nice, like I said, for design reviews. And also if you, let's say after construction, maybe someone comes, they need a penetration or they need some adjustment, whatever the case, this gives you a nice quick visual overview of where your highly loaded areas are. It's just another quick point of call when making design decisions. Okay. Then managing rebar. So we look now at placing rebar. We looked at assigning views and different ways to view it, and the partitions, which we did touch on, but just to mention again, it's a means of identification and organizing your bars in Revit, and there's various ways to do this. You can do it according to construction sequences or phasing, and it could look something like this. Or something like this is also quite nice. This is also according to different levels. This one is actually, let me actually just go back. This one is not according to construction sequence. This one is according to element type. So you can see that the piles have the green bars, the pile cap has the yellow bars, the starter bars are all red, and then you've got columns again that are green on the top. And then you've got those links in black. So that just helps you that when you look at it, you don't just see a mass of lines, you actually see the differences in the elements. Okay, and that's actually your host element types. Another example is this bridge, so you can easily see where the piers are, where the deck is, and in this way, your schedules will also be delineated in the same way. It's also nice when you're doing prefab, we want to see the location within a host, location within a model. And again, this is, I particularly think that partitions should be used for scheduling. It's not commonly used like this, but it does make scheduling easier. And in the next section, I think we'll go through that in a bit more detail. And why it's nice is because you can link your partitions to your key plan. So the names of the elements that you have in your key plan, you will have on your partitions. And where you set this is in your properties browser. And another thing just to keep in mind is that each bar can only be assigned one partition. So you can't have multiple partitions assigned to one bar. Then talking about rebar numbers is the same as a bar mark as you would know it. So 008, 003, and 008 that you're seeing in that image over there, that's your bar mark, but in Revit it's called the rebar number. And bars are numbered automatically as you place them in Revit. So the numbers are incremental, it's not editable. And this can be frustrating when that is what you're used to, but there are some advantages to that, and the quicker you become used to it, the quicker it will be to sort of adapt to that. And what it does is that bars with identical type, size, material, shape, and size will have the same number. So it sort of compacts your schedule so that you don't have repeated bars appearing in your schedule, although they have the same like cut details, but they're different numbers. So you won't have that. It makes your schedule nice and concise, and it also allows for automatic counting of those bars in your tags as well. And if you make any changes, the Rebar numbers will update automatically, and it also updates in all the views. So you don't, if you make a change, you don't have to go to your section and your longitudinal view and your plan view and your elevation view and update it. It updates automatically. So that is the biggest plus, I would say. There is an alternative that you can use to Rebar number, that's schedule mark. Schedule mark would be editable the same way that bar marks are editable in the traditional programs. So let's go back to the settings now and see what this looks like. So if we go to the Rebar numbers in the settings, you'll see the various partitions of the beams, and you can also see the numbers that are currently in use. I'm just going to change this so that the Rebar numbers have 2 digits. So I've got 040104, and yeah, those are the partitions of the various elements. So members, as it is known in AutoCAD, and you can see it also tells you the starting point. So I want each of my schedules to start at the number 1. And then you'll also see that some of these items have got an asterisk next to it that tells you that there's gaps in the numbers. So at the end, there's the tick box to remove gaps, and that just will change the Rebar numbers automatically. So now you've got your nice, concise, and logical schedule. And the numbers are now automatically updated in all the views and in the schedule as well. So you don't have to go back and update those numbers. Okay, then the last thing is just the key plan. So this is entirely optional. I like to have a key plan in Revit as well, just because it helps you to keep track of everything. I went and I set up a template for my key plan to show only the minimal things I don't need. I don't need to see sections. I'm actually just going to go to the annotation categories and switch off sections. Same for detail views and callouts. Okay, cool. It's a lot cleaner now. So I'm going to create a project parameter for the key plan number. This will be a shared parameter because I want to use it in the tag as well. I've already created this parameter. If you don't, you won't have it. So you need to go to edit and then create a new one to add it to the list. I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. This is going to be text, and I want it to show up in my identity data. And the elements that I want to apply it to is my concrete elements that I'm going to reinforce. So that's columns, framing, foundations, and walls. Floors is not necessary. And then I'm going to tag this beam. Oh, I first need to actually assign the key plan number. Okay. So that parameter is now available in the identity panel of the properties window. So I'm just going to do this really quickly, just assign. Okay, that's all the key plan numbers. Okay, and now I can go ahead and tag it. So this is just the default framing tag. To get that actual key plan number, I'm going to have to go and edit the family and put the parameter in there that I just created. So I'll edit the label, remove all of these. And then I need to find my key plan number. I need to add it. Okay, so I'll add new, select, that's the parameter I just created. So I'll just add it to the label, hit OK. Okay, just remember to save as because it's a new type of tag. And once it's saved, it can be loaded into the project. Just make sure to select the right project if you've got multiple projects open. Okay, and then just go back to my key plan view and then change this tag type. Okay, I don't want the leader either. And I'll just move it closer. Okay, then I'm just going to select all the beams that I want to tag. Okay, that's fine. Go to the Annotate panel, tag all the framing elements. Okay, happy with that. And there we go. And you'll do the same for the rest of the beams. So now you can see beam A is being repeated. Beam O1A is also being repeated. Okay. So I think we're a few minutes over, but that does bring us to the end of the just going through the presentation. But before I sign off and say goodbye, I just want to do a bit of a recap. So the things that we covered today, we talked about the different ways that you can view rebar in Revit, so the different settings that are available. We also looked at how to place rebar and the prerequisites. So you need a structural element, it has to be a concrete element, and you have to be in a section view to be able to place rebar. We looked at the different ways that filters can be used. That's completely customizable and up to you, and depends on your team and your workflow, and it depends on the project as well. But you've seen some examples, and I hope something came to mind that would be useful for you in your instance. And then we also touched on managing rebar for scheduling, which we'll go through in more detail in the next section. And then we looked at how you can also create key plans in Revit that are separate to your actual structural layouts. And another thing I also would just like to remind you guys again is to really make use of the Autodesk Knowledge Center and the forums, and then also to take advantage of the open source add-ins and scripts that are out there, because that really is going to save you. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. And then I also just want to talk about what is up next. So in the next session, we're going to look more into settings. There's some other settings in terms of the hooks and the bends and making your project suitable to the SABS codes. We'll talk more about hosts and partitions. We'll go more into annotating and scheduling, and then also talk about standardization. And why I'm mentioning standardization here is because it's like a key element of leveling up your BIM journey, which is what the series is all about. And just like BIM is a buzzword in our industry, so too is digital transformation, like across all industries. And it's important because you need to ask yourself, exactly what are you trying to achieve with this digital transformation? It's not just like a magic wand where, you buy Revit, you install Revit, and then Revit equals BIM and BIM equals digital transformation. That's really not the case, because what will really drive the success of your digital transformation or leveling up your BIM journey is the people and the processes that are involved, and that the people and the processes have to sort of work together. And we are here to assist along that journey, to help you along whether it's your BIM journey or your digital transformation journey. And the different ways that we do that, how we can help you is through these webinars. I really hope that it is beneficial for you guys. But some of you might know that we do training as well. We do some consulting as well. So really feel free to reach out to us. We really are here to help you, whether it is with a BIM execution plan or just a refresher course, or just some advice on how to get your manager to agree with you. And this is our details. We're based both in Cape Town and in Joburg. We've also got a support line for our existing customers from 8 till 11:30 during the week. And yeah, with that, I would just like to open up for questions if there are any. And let me actually just monitor the chat box here. Questions or comments? Okay, so it looks like not. There aren't any questions. I hope that's a good thing. But yeah, of course, if there's anything that you missed, this video will be available on YouTube, and I'm sure you guys have my details if you would like to get in touch. So with that, I would like to say thank you for joining me on this Friday afternoon, and have a good weekend.